up on Global Business, a healthy surge. Manufacturing activity expands in China for a third consecutive month in January, marking the longest period of expansion since May 2021. Government spending. The Finance Ministry says China will maintain a necessary level of government spending throughout 2024. Rate decision. The Bank of England keeps key interest rates unchanged following a divergence of opinions among officials regarding the most suitable policy course. Welcome to Global Business here on CGTN. I'm Michelle Vandenberg. Xi Jinping, General Secretary of the Communist Party of China Central Committee and Chinese President, has called for efforts to accelerate the development of new productive forces and promote high-quality development. He gave the directive on Wednesday while presiding over a group study session of the Political Bureau of the CPC Central Committee. Xi Jinping stressed that high-quality development is an unyielding principle in the new era. He said China needs to accelerate the modernization of the economy, promote high-level self-reliance in science and technology, advance both reform and opening up, and pursue both development and security. He praised China's technological and innovative breakthroughs and achievements in green transition. He also said with innovation playing the leading role, new productive forces mean advanced productivity that is freed from traditional economic growth models and productivity development paths, features high-tech, high-efficiency, and high-quality services, and is in line with the new development philosophy. Xi Jinping called for more innovations in science and technology, especially original and disruptive innovations. He also noted that these innovations should be applied to specific industries and industrial chains in a timely manner. He highlighted enhanced efforts to develop the digital economy and called for deep integration of the digital economy and the real economy. He also said the new productive forces are in itself green productive forces, urging more efforts in green energy and low-carbon industries and supply chains. To China's manufacturing sector, which expanded for a third consecutive month in January 2024, marking the longest period of expansion since May 2021. The Caixin Purchasing Managers Index for China's manufacturing sector remained flat at 50.8 in January. A reading above 50 indicates expansion, while below 50 signals contraction. Meanwhile, market sentiment continued to improve as manufacturing output grew for the fifth time in the past 6 months, while new orders remained in expansionary territory for 6 consecutive months. Caixin analysts said both supply and demand are expanding, with supply outpacing demand. Now, for more discussions on the latest manufacturing data, we're joined by Shi Fanqi, Assistant Professor in the School of Economics at Peking University. Professor Shi, so what was the significant development in fiscal revenue and expenditure in 2023 for China?
Thank you very much for the invitation. So for the fiscal revenue and expenditure, let's first look at the data. We see that in the year, the fiscal revenue was up by 6.4% to over 210 trillion, while the expenditure was up by around 5.4% to over 270 trillion. But if we look into the data, probably it is not as optimistic as we may expect. For the revenue, we see that the biggest increase is actually in the value-added tax, but that's mostly because there was a lot of accrued tax from the previous year, and the VAT tax we see was up by over 40%, while all the other tax categories was kind of down. Well, for the expenditure, we see the biggest increase in expenditure was in education, social security, and R&D. So that's basically in line with the government's effort to promote science and technology.
Yeah. Now let's talk about the latest Caixin manufacturing PMI data, which came in at 50.8, flat from the previous month. How shall we interpret this data?
Well, so if we look a little bit deeper into the data, we see that the trend is pretty much similar to the previous months. So in particular, basically the non-manufacturing, or especially the services sector, still perform much better than the manufacturing sector. So for the manufacturing sector and also the import and export, we see there is a kind of a discrepancy between this data and that released by the official and the other the official data, which is released by the National Bureau of Statistics. We see that for this Caixin index, basically the manufacturing index is over 50, while that of the official data was below 50, and that's also true for the import and export. So basically, we see that even though there's kind of a discrepancy, we can see pretty much like the big picture is that it is still a kind of a slow recovery.
So there is, like you mentioned, there's a notable difference between this Caixin PMI and the official PMI. Could you elaborate a little bit more on that, and also what kind of trend can we expect going forward?
Well, so for the discrepancy is major because of how the data was gathered. So we see that the official data was gathered based on survey of over 3,000 enterprises. Most of them are big or medium enterprises, and a lot of them are state-owned. But for the Caixin index, it's based on survey with a lot of small and medium enterprises, and most notably, those enterprises are mostly from the east and coastal areas. So it doesn't quite reflect the entire economy of basically of the whole country. So basically, what we can see from the data is that probably like for the import and export, it's basically doing a little bit better than before, and especially true for small and medium enterprises. While on the other hand, probably some of the state enterprises are still facing hardships regarding the import and export, and also regarding the manufacturing, because we see that the manufacturing of the Caixin index is up, and that's because it's kind of related with the manufacturing for import and export of those small and medium enterprises. So moving forward, basically, we see it's again a kind of a tension between between those east and coastal areas and those traditional state and medium enterprises. And also there's a little bit of a tension of between basically we see that the e-platforms that's kind of closely related with the performance of the coastal areas and those traditional sectors.
Very interesting. Thank you so much for your insights. Always great to have you on the show. Shifan Qi, Assistant Professor in the School of Economics at Peking University for us. Official data shows China's fiscal revenue rose by more than 6% in 2023 from a year earlier. Vice Minister of Finance Wang Dongwei announced on Thursday that investment would be increased under the central government budget in the coming year. Zheng Chunying has more.
Addressing reporters in Beijing, the vice minister said economic improvements and the introduction of large-scale value-added tax refunds in 2022 contributed to the fiscal revenue growth in 2023.
National General Public Budget revenue exceeded 21 trillion yuan last year, an increase of 6.4% year-on-year. From a local perspective, income generated in eastern, central, western, and northeastern regions increased by 6.7%, 6.9%, 10.7%, and 12% respectively.
The vice minister said China's budget deficit would be maintained at a certain level in 2024, and that the finance ministry would continue to set what it describes as an appropriate quota for issuing new special local government bonds, a key source of infrastructure investment. That way, overall government spending would increase and play a better role in stimulating domestic demand.
The revenue will continue to grow, and we will maintain a certain intensity in physical spending in 2024. The central government will continue transferring funds to help cash-strapped local authorities to meet basic spending needs.
The finance ministry says it will implement structural tax cuts in 2024 and provide support for tech innovation and the manufacturing sector. The press conference also addressed concerns about the sustainability of China's pension system. Government officials confirmed that the operation of the fund is in good condition and said China could ensure pensions would be paid on time and in full. Looking ahead to the rest of 2024, the central government confirmed it would further increase subsidies to improve the country's pension schemes and support for pension services. Zheng Chunying, CGTN, Beijing.
The Chinese Railway and Aviation departments are taking various measures to cope with the freezing weather in eastern and southern China, which is expected to affect the transport season. China's weather authorities warned on Wednesday that several regions in China are forecast to see heavy snowfall in the next few days. In response, some trains in the affected areas have been suspended. Passengers have been informed of the changes and offered free of charge refunds or rescheduling. The railway authorities said that they are on 24-hour duty to repair any equipment failure and stand ready to clear the snow and ice from the tracks. Transport authorities say Wednesday saw more than 11 million railway trips, up by 69% than last year. Meanwhile, more than 100 airports have issued alerts warning of possible air traffic disruptions. The Spring Festival travel rush, or Chunyun, lasts for 40 days from January 26th to March 5th. We're zooming in on recreational activity as the Spring Festival approaches. The Chinese Academy of Social Sciences released the Green Book of China's Tourism on Wednesday, which features analysis of the 2023 to 2024 tourism development in China. According to the Green Book, the number of domestic trips is estimated to reach 5.4 billion in 2023, 90% of that of 2019. Tourism revenue is estimated to hit 5.2 trillion yuan in 2023, 91% of 2019. Average household expenditure was about 5,000 yuan. Meanwhile, a survey included in the report reveals 45% of respondents are willing to increase travel expenditure in 2024. In addition to travel, the 2024 Spring Festival box office is expected to exceed 6 billion yuan, or over $800 million. By Thursday afternoon, pre-sales have surpassed 100 million yuan. With Spring Festival just a little more than a week away, people around the country are thinking about what dishes to prepare for New Year's Eve, and restaurants are going all out to cash in. Song Yaotian has more.
Here in a restaurant in the southern city of Nanning in Guangxi Zhuang Autonomous Region, all 24 rooms, each accommodating 10 to 20 people, are booked out for Lunar New Year's Eve. And one set of seafood dish can set you back nearly 4,000 yuan, or about $540. Also in China's south, in Xuanwei, Yunnan province, this farmer's market is full of Lunar New Year food and decorations. Ham produced locally is a popular delicacy, and booths selling ham are surrounded by customers.
Steamed ham and fried ham is a fixture on our New Year's Eve table.
And some people are looking to buy fresh pig's legs to make sausages at home.
I can sell more than 1,000 pig's legs during the 10 days before the Lunar New Year.
At this company in Shenzhen, Guangdong province, employees are busy making ready-to-cook food to cater to booming demand from customers. The company manager says all of their 4 types of set dishes can be eaten after being heated for a short time. And ready-to-cook dishes are popular choices at supermarkets too. Sales of such dishes at this supermarket have doubled compared to the same period last year. They are particularly popular among younger Chinese who are used to ordering food online and favor cooking procedures that are as easy as possible. Song Yaotian, CGTN.
Moving on to some other business headlines from across China. China achieved a record high in trade in services in 2023, with travel services leading the way in terms of growth rate. According to the latest data from the Commerce Ministry, the total transaction value for trade in services in 2023 increased by 10% year-on-year, reaching approximately 6.6 trillion yuan, equivalent to around $930 billion. Data from the National Bureau of Statistics indicates that 17 out of 31 provinces surpassed the national GDP growth rate of 5.2% in 2023. The top three performers were the Xizang Autonomous Region, Hainan Province, and Inner Mongolia Autonomous Region. China surpassed the U.S. to become the leading exporter of cross-border e-commerce to South Korea. Statistics Korea data shows that China's online sales to the country surged by over 121% in 2023 on a yearly basis. You're watching Global Business, still to come. The U.S. Federal Reserve left key interest rates unchanged on Wednesday, signaling a major step towards potentially lowering them in the coming months in a policy statement.
The world economy as we know it is about to change. Global business reports highlight emerging markets, developing countries, and dynamic sectors worldwide. We feature top analysts and newsmakers to provide perspectives on every facet of business. From an on-the-ground perspective, we provide you with balanced and objective assessments. Fast, sharp, and insightful. Global Business. Only on CGTN.
The U.S. Central Bank has confirmed it's ready to begin cutting its benchmark interest rate as inflation drops closer to its target range. The Federal Reserve held off raising the rate it hiked dramatically to force prices down. And new data suggests projections about damaging the economy through those aggressive rises have been upended. Owen Fairclough has more.
Has the U.S. Central Bank, the Federal Reserve, finally won the inflation battle? It hasn't raised its benchmark interest rate since last July, after ramping it up to drive down prices that spiraled out of control in 2022. And now that inflation has been largely tamed, Fed Chair Jerome Powell is under pressure to cut that rate. The question is when.
We believe that our policy rate is likely at its peak for this tightening cycle, and that if the economy evolves broadly as expected, it will likely be appropriate to begin dialing back policy restraint at some point this year.
And how this post-pandemic inflation crisis has been solved is a puzzle.
And it's one that even some experts are struggling to explain. Jerome Powell warned that that series of interest rate hikes designed to bring down inflation would be painful for businesses and consumers and might even trigger a recession. Instead, the opposite has happened. The US economy is outperforming every other advanced economy, wages are rising, and employers continue to expand their businesses by hiring more staff, even when the costs of doing so were elevated by those interest rate hikes. And it doesn't stop there. The projection for 2024 is also pretty good for the US.
Even so, with that benchmark rate at around 5.5%, it's driven up the average 30-year mortgage so much, many prospective buyers have been priced out of the market. One argument for cutting rates.
What we're trying to do is identify a place where we're really confident about inflation, get it going back to 2%, so that we can then begin the process of dialing back the restrictive level.
And yet, with the economy defying expectations, some economists think the Fed needs to consider the lag between hiking interest rates and their impact on the economy before taking action. Owen Fairclough, CGTN, Washington.
Earlier, we spoke to Jimmy Zhu, Chief Strategist of Fullerton Research, for his analysis of the U.S. Federal Reserve's decision and its impact.
It seems like not very happy about the current market expectations. But when we look at the inflation data, it's actually coming down in the past few months. So I think the thing makes the Powell extremely not happy is the stocks market price, because the rate cut expectation has pushed the stocks market price much higher compared with a few months ago. So I think Powell think if the things just carry on, the stocks market keep going higher and bond yield keep going lower, that is really something will make the Federal Reserve to maintain the 2% inflation goal very difficult. So having that said, I think the Fed decisions on that part is actually putting a cap on the U.S. stocks price for this year. The Fed expressed the geopolitical tension in the Middle East, its impact on the oil prices. I think that it's the uncertainty. But one thing I want to highlight is this year is the election year. Usually the Fed doesn't really want to move the rates much in the election year. 2020 is a very different because it's the COVID. So apart from that, I think the Fed trying to makes the rate stable for this year. So I think probably the earliest rate cut for this year is about June, and probably another cut, if it happens, probably it will happen after the election. So the market might see some disappointed in the coming few months. The dollar is the key thing. The market this morning is still pretty calm on the Asia basis. That's because the dollar index is still pretty stable. I think probably when the Fed, ECB, Bank of England, those kind of developed central banks all start to cutting the interest rates, I think that's the very positive thing for the emerging markets. Probably we will see the flows might be more inclined to move to the emerging markets, maybe from third quarter onwards, based on the more central banks are willing to cut. But it just probably not happen in the first half.
Meanwhile, several central banks in Europe have opted to maintain their current interest rates. Notably, both the Bank of England and Sweden's Riksbank have chosen to keep their key interest rates unchanged on Thursday, with the former holding rates at a 15-year high of 5.25% and latter at 4%. The decision-making process within the UK was marked by a division of opinions regarding the timing of a potential rate cut, while the Riksbank has hinted at the possibility of a rate reduction in the first half of this year. Newly released data on Thursday has bolstered market expectations of an accelerated rate cut as consumer inflation in the Eurozone has marginally decreased to 2.8% in January from the previous 2.9% in December. Meanwhile, manufacturing activity in the Eurozone remains in contraction despite an upward trend. Official data shows the Eurozone manufacturing PMI climbed to a 10-month high of 46.6 in January. Among the member countries, France's manufacturing sector saw a faster contraction as the PMI plunged to 43.1 in the first month of 2023. On the contrary, the downturn in Germany's manufacturing sector eased in January, with the finalized figure coming in at 45.5. Meanwhile, the UK's manufacturing PMI came in at 47 as Red Sea tensions continue to weigh on the country's supply chain. It has been 4 years since the Brexit took place, and over the past few years, small enterprises and farmers in Britain have been significantly affected by the ensuing changes. Let's hear more from our correspondent Paul Hawkins.
It depends on the size of the business, quite frankly. If you're a small business, then you will struggle to trade into the European Union. So we visited a small business in Derbyshire, in fact the world's smallest Stilton maker, and they told us that they've replaced the trade with the EU with the trade in the UK. But talking about doing trade deals with places like India and America simply won't work for them because they don't have the economies of scale and the size to sell into those markets, even if there was a trade deal, which, as we know, there isn't at the moment. Bigger companies, though, like where we are now, they've found ways of getting around the rules. We can talk to one of them now. This is Simon Sparrow, who's the founder of the Cheshire Cheese Company. Simon, in a nutshell, Brexit essentially meant that you were unable to sell into the EU. Tell us in simpleton terms exactly how you got around that.
Okay, yeah, we've rapidly realised from the 1st of January 2021 that we lost access to the consumer market. We had a big one of the biggest online retail sellers of cheese of our own brand, and rapidly after that we realised, because of the extra costs associated with trading, with the bureaucracy and the paperwork, the health certificates and the vet bill, the vet inspections, that it became commercially viable for us to actually even wholesale into Europe as well.
So you essentially sold the business to someone who had a German subsidiary set up?
Yes, I was given the opportunity to actually sell a majority stake in our company to our neighbours, Joseph Healer, who are a lot larger than us, and it's the economy of scale. We consolidate now with them our products to their German entity, so we import and export between ourselves, and that works, but that only works for the larger organisations. It was impossible for me as a smaller business and other smaller businesses to actually even entertain this method, because just setting the entity up itself and paying the VAT and the taxation to Europe, as we have to do through that entity, it's a non-starter for small companies.
Yeah, so there you go. There's a lot of cheese here that at the moment, someone's going to have to eat it at some point. Just to give you the UK government's position, they say exports are up $56 billion to $1.1 trillion compared to the 12 months to November 2022. We have expanded our global network of agri-food attaches to strengthen our engagement in other countries, boost trade and resolve barriers that UK exporters face. They're also delivering the export package and implementing the dairy export programme, which will help businesses to grasp new opportunities around the world.
Artificial intelligence poses challenges to global learning and teaching, but a conference that commenced in Shanghai on Tuesday explores the role that cutting-edge technologies could play in the education of tomorrow. Some 800 guests from 70 countries and regions, including 20 ministers of education, have gathered in the Chinese megacity for the 2024 World Digital Education Conference. Liu Sirui has the details.
The 2024 World Digital Education Conference aims to take education to the next level by exploring how to best use cutting-edge technologies and exploring the ethical issues that artificial intelligence poses to the sector.
The fact that we're attending the conference shows we're paying great attention to digital education. We've cooperated with China in many ways to develop digital education back in Gabon, and we hope China will continue to support us.
What we're actually doing is bringing the best from the Chinese education and the best from the UK education and bringing them together and learning from each other and creating a truly unique education experience which the students love and of course then go on to top jobs here in China or overseas as well.
As part of the conference, China has also issued reports on digital education levels across the world, as well as its cooperation with other countries. The inauguration ceremony for the World Digital Education Alliance was also held during the conference on Tuesday morning. The new initiative aims to drive cooperation and features top Chinese universities as well as those from Arab and Southeast Asian nations. Ethical issues surrounding technology in the sector were discussed in parallel sessions.
The worst situation would be to ban the use of technology such as AI in education because of the possible risks. At the end of the day, other industries are using them, and we need to prepare our students for today's society. What we should do is improve the regulation and training of teachers in using the technology.
Officials also say China's digital education industry will strive to become more integrated, international, and intelligent, and making contribution to establishing a community with a shared future for mankind. Liu Sirui, CGTN, Shanghai.
And that will do it for this edition of Global Business. I'm Michelle Vandenberg in Beijing. Thank you for watching. Bye for now.